Hey everyone, Mr. Harvey here. Let's continue our lecture. We are on Chapter 17, ladies and gentlemen, and today we're going to finish our lecture on Chapter 17, talking about new imperialism during the late 1800s and early 1900s. Now, this lecture, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be divided up into three parts. We're going to talk about technology during the age of new imperialism. We're going to talk a little bit about religion during the age of new imperialism, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to finish up this lecture, ladies and gentlemen, talking about science during the age of new imperialism. So let's get started. All right, technology is going to play a really vital role, ladies and gentlemen, an important role during this age of new imperialism. And this, the technology that we're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, is going to allow and facilitate, be a key factor in facilitating these European imperialized empires that we are going to be seeing worldwide. And one of the technological advantages that we are going to see the Europeans have during this time, ladies and gentlemen, is with their ocean craft, with the advent of the steamboat, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Europeans had long possessed naval superiority, but the steamboat is going to be, ladies and gentlemen, a huge advantage that we are going to see the Europeans exploit as they establish their imperial empires. Robert Fulton, he's going to invent the steamboat, and the steamboat, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be a big advantage for a couple reasons. Number one, it's going to allow them to go into shallow coastal waters. It's going to allow them to go deep into rivers as they can kind of go upstream. These steamboats are going to be made of iron, later steel, and these steamboats, ladies and gentlemen, are going to be able to go fast and have very powerful engines and be able to deal with all types of weather. The steamboat, ladies and gentlemen, initially is going to be powered by the steam engine. Later on, as we see industrialism, right, especially the Second Industrial Revolution, we're going to see these steamboats be replaced with, and steam engines be replaced with the internal combustion engine. And then from that, we're going to see gigantic, destroyers, dreadnought battleships, and eventually submarines. Okay, but when it comes to imperialism, a single ship made of iron and steel with a powerful engine was typically very impossible for local rulers to stop. They simply did not have the weaponry to stop one of these ships, ladies and gentlemen. And one of the prime examples of this advantage that the Europeans are going to have can be seen in the Opium Wars, where the Chinese had wooden ships, the British, the French, the Europeans had these steamboats, these metallic ships, and the advantage was too great for the Chinese that the Europeans had. That advantage was too great for the Chinese to overcome. Okay, so the advent of the steamboat and these metallic ships, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we're going to see another advantage in advancement and technological tool that we're going to see is modern medicine, ladies and gentlemen, and that's going to allow for the conquest of some tropical diseases that had often proved as an obstacle for Europeans. The tropical disease that was very devastating that Europeans could not really overcome was malaria, and that really prevented them from going to not just far in African areas, but in other areas where there's a lot of malaria prevalent. And this disease, ladies and gentlemen, prior to the advent of quinine, would kill roughly 50% of the people exploring. Roughly, it was deadly. It was devastating. And there was really nothing to combat malaria. But quinine is going to allow for this. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, quinine is a new medicine, is new technology that is going to allow Europeans to help conquer malaria and allow for Europeans to explore areas where there's prevalent malaria, prevalent mosquitoes, and eventually allow for the eventual partition and take it and kind of takeover of lands that had been previously inaccessible for Europeans. All right, weaponry, ladies and gentlemen, is going to change a lot, and we're going to see the Europeans, and we've kind of already referenced this before, have a distinct superiority when it comes to weaponry. The rifle is going to be improved during this time. We're going to see percussion caps, which will allow for a rifle to be used in wet weather. The design of bullets is going to be advanced. They can go farther. They can go straighter. The British Enfield will be one of these rifles that is very advanced during this time. It's going to be used by the British in World War I and in World War II. But the weapon that's going to be just devastating within the age of new imperialism, and as we're going to see in World War I, ladies and gentlemen, is the machine gun. This was a devastating rapid-fire weapon. It's brand new. It is just a devastating weapon, and it's going to change, ladies and gentlemen, as we will discuss later on in World War I. It will change warfare forever, and we will see, especially once Europeans use these weapons on one another, we are going to see how it changes warfare. Okay, but this new technology, this new weaponry that we are going to be seeing is going to give Europeans help Europeans and help facilitate the creation of these imperialized empires. All right, and there is a picture of one of the earliest machine guns, a devastating weapon, ladies and gentlemen. All right, now let's talk a little about religion, ladies and gentlemen. Religion is going to play a very important role within the age of new imperialism, ladies and gentlemen. And we are going to see a modern day kind of missionary movement that started during this time and a little bit earlier in the 1700s, but play a really important role within the age of new imperialism. We're going to see very much an evangelical movement that favored the authority of the Bible, very much Protestantism. The importance of personal conversion, the duty to spread the gospel. There's going to be a big belief in the second coming of Jesus, and we're going to see from this evangelical movement and with new imperialism going on, we're going to see evangelical groups, churches, look for the opportunity and look for new followers and try to recruit new followers in non-Western lands. And we're going to see both Protestants first, and Roman Catholics participate within this, ladies and gentlemen. And this is going to result in a widespread missionary campaign in Asia and in Africa. Now, and you don't have to memorize all the details with this, ladies and gentlemen, but understand that we are going to see multiple missionary societies that are going to be found in the 18th century, but really take off with this new imperialism in the 19th century. We're going to see these missionary societies all throughout Europe. There's going to be the British Baptist Missionary Society, the Missionary Society of London, of Edinburgh, of Glasgow, of Scotland. Those are Scottish areas. Church of England Missionary Society, and many of these missionary societies believe that they lived in a moment. This is with new imperialism, that they had the opportunity to expand Christianity. And there's going to be the argument amongst a lot of these religious figures and missionaries that it was an obligation to bring Christianity to these imperialized lands, to non-Western peoples. And initially, these missionary movements, and we'll talk about kind of what goes on during this time, will flounder, but they will find and pick up a lot of steam and success in the 1900s. And we're going to see German missionary societies, French missionary societies, British missionary societies. It is going to be throughout some of the major powers who are participating within imperialism. They will have a religious movement within their imperialized lands. All right. Now, really important to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that we're going to see Roman Catholics play an important role within this missionary movement that we are going to be seeing during the age of new imperialism, ladies and gentlemen. And this is important to understand for a couple of reasons. Number one is that the Roman Catholic, especially in France, we're going to see a resurgence of Roman Catholicism in France following the French Revolution and Napoleon. If you remember, going back to de-Christianization, the civil constitution of the clergy, Napoleon's deal with the Catholic Church, that Catholicism had definitely been suppressed during the French Revolution and Napoleonic era. Well, we're going to see after Napoleon's gone, the French Revolution is over, we're going to see a large resurgence of the Roman Catholic Church, especially in France. And we are going to see this French Missionary Society use new imperialism, ladies and gentlemen, as a way to spread Catholicism, not just in France, but in the areas where France will be establishing their imperial empire. They're going to be in China, and they're going to be in Indochina and areas like Vietnam, which is part of Indochina. Okay, they're going to establish also in Africa the White Fathers group to bring Catholicism, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, let's talk a little bit about women, ladies and gentlemen, and missionary activity. Women are going to play a large role within this missionary movement that we are going to be seeing during this age of new imperialism, ladies and gentlemen. we are going to see Europeans had a very limited understanding of the women in other cultures, and so they're going to, because they had such a limited cultural understanding of women of other cultures, they are going to try to recruit European women to bring them culture. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to see definitely social Darwinism, that notion of social Darwinism. We're going to see that notion of the white man's burden, that notion of the duty to bring a superior culture to what Europeans perceive as an inferior non-Western culture and people. And so when it comes to women, Europeans had this limited, and they had little understanding of women of other cultures. They often saw them as oppressed, and therefore were motivated to bring them what the Europeans perceived as culture and civilization. Europeans, they saw some of the cultural norms and practices of some of these non-Western areas, like in China, the binding of the woman's feet, in India, where a woman throws herself into a fire if her husband is to die. They saw these non-Western cultural rituals as oppressive, and they saw them, and therefore the Europeans believed it was their duty to recruit other women, European women, to bring these women of other cultures, European culture, in order to liberate them from these non-Western cultural practices. And so we're going to see women play a large role, ladies and gentlemen, in this missionary movement. All right. And this is going to give women in Europe and abroad a chance to travel, to see the world. And we're going to see European women on a level that we've never seen before, interacting with women of other cultures and other areas. All right. And here is an example. As you can see, a European woman right here. And these are women, non-Western women. And you can kind of see that this woman right here is kind of their teacher, and trying to bring them Western culture. All right, let's continue. All right, now it's really important to understand, ladies and gentlemen, that this missionary movement, this religious movement that we're going to see, this cultural movement from Europeans really trying to bring European culture, European religion, European language, European history, European customs over to non-Western lands in Africa and in Asia. We're going to see, with the missionaries trying to do this, some huge tensions between this missionary movement and some of the imperial administrators. So recognize that the missionaries have an agenda, a specific agenda that they want to accomplish in these imperialized lands, and the imperial administrators, the governments, have their agenda, typically more political and economic based, missionaries more cultural and religiously based. So different agendas. And this relationship between the missionaries and imperial governments, ladies and gentlemen, is important for us to understand because it's quite complex. Okay? So initially, the colonial administrators are going to resist the introduction of missionaries for a variety of reasons. And you don't have to memorize them all, ladies and gentlemen. Let's just kind of understand some of the basics, okay? Number one is that the administrators feared that the missionaries would defend the rights of natives, or would interfere with their commercial interests, those economic interests, to increase profits and make a profit and to make money. The missionaries would often clash with settlers or imperial administrators who wanted to prevent the natives from gaining an education that would allow them to compete with the European settlers there. A huge headache for the imperial administrators would be conflicts amongst the missionaries. So, some of the Catholic missionaries and Protestant missionaries not getting along, or some of the Protestant missionaries not getting along with one another. This idea of the equality before God, and this very notion of equality, very much undermined the imperial governments and the kind of the social structure and social, economic, and political structure that they were establishing. They were purposely establishing unequal governmental structures in order to oppress the non-Western communities that were being kind of taken over. and they very much feared that the missionaries, promoting ideas of equality and whatnot could create a rebellion or a revolution or some discontent. All right. But it's important to understand that the imperial administrators, and I'm going to talk a little about this, especially with education, they did see an advantage that the missionaries could provide for these imperial governments. And the missionaries, one of the big advantages we'll see, the missionaries are going to provide a majority of educational infrastructure for the imperial governments. And we'll talk about why the education is going to be helpful for the imperial administrators. And the best example for this, ladies and gentlemen, is between the French Roman Catholics and the French Roman Catholic missionaries in the Third Republic. Now, although the French Catholic Church and the Third Republic clash, the government is going to support them, and part of the reason why is the missionaries are going to be teaching the communities, the non-Western communities, French and French culture, and that's going to make it a lot easier for the government of the Third Republic, the government of these imperial governments, to communicate, and therefore kind of easier for their commercial interests to operate. If they can communicate with the people easier, there's a shared language. It's going to a little bit easier to for the European countries to facilitate their commercial interests. All right. So the missionaries are going to see themselves as very important in spreading civilization and culture. This is social Darwinism all the way, ladies and gentlemen. We can see this. It's that white man's burden. And the missionaries, in order to bring about cultural change, are going to make that assumption that the natives have an inferior culture, that they have an inferior society, an inferior language, an inferior history, an inferior religion, and they are going to believe it is their duty to bring them what the Europeans perceive as a superior religion, language, and cultural customs. And we're going to see the missionaries, in order to try to do this, are not just going to have to are going to have to also try to understand the indigenous cultures, their language and their customs, in order to even try to communicate with them. So, this is definitely, ladies and gentlemen, an example that we have talked about, especially in earlier chapters, of social Darwinism, of the racism that we are going to be seeing during this time, and of that notion of the white man's burden. All right. So missionary activity, ladies and gentlemen, also gave rise to Asian and African religious movements that are also going to challenge the dominance of the Western missionaries. We're going to see the founding of new Asian and African churches that are going to merge the traditional non-Western culture with Christianity. And some of these leaders of these new churches are going to be African or Asian. An example of this is David Brown Vincent with the Native Baptist Church in Nigeria. And the relationship between this missionary movement, ladies and gentlemen, and colonialism was defined by a few variables. Number one, it was very dynamic and changing throughout imperialism. It spawned a great deal of publicity and interest in the non-Western world. People are going to be more interested in non-Western areas. We're going to see missionary movements become very skilled at pressuring governments and interacting with governments. And we're going to see, ladies and gentlemen, the decline of Western Christian dominance in non-Western lands. We're going to see non-Western dominance, non-Western groups, Christian groups start to dominate the Christianity in their areas. So it's not necessarily, we're going to see Europeans slowly decline when it comes to Christianity and religion as the leaders. We're going to see in these non-Western lands, non-Western leaders dominate the Christian faith in those areas. And we're also, ladies and gentlemen, going to see Christianity become a worldwide religion for the first time. Okay, it's definitely going to be ingrained worldwide with new imperialism. All right, let's continue. All right. So science and imperialism, ladies and gentlemen, is going to be a really interesting relationship and a topic. And so let's talk about it. Exploration and science coexisted, ladies and gentlemen, and worked kind of hand in hand, ladies and gentlemen. Often scientists were included within early exploration, and later imperial traveling. Examples are Sir Joseph Banks with James Cook, kind of collecting specimens for biological categorization. Geography is going to be an expanding scientific discipline as Europeans are traveling more and more throughout the world. And scientists in geographical societies favored imperialism as their research benefited from this. So scientists, were very much supportive of these imperial empires and imperial ventures and going to non-Western lands because their science, their research benefited from this. It allowed them to see different land types. It allowed them to see different animals, plants. It allowed them to see, entire different parts of the world. And one area that's going to be really scientific area that's really going to develop during this time is botany with plants and agriculture. We are going to see, ladies and gentlemen, and this represents really the vast growth and understanding of agriculture around the globe. And we're going to see many colonial lands, start to farm cash crops, cotton, cacao, sugar, tea, and then we're also going to see many colonial plants start to go back and be used in Europe. Palm oil from West Africa is going to be used in cooking, soaps, and cosmetics. And kind of what we're going to be seeing during this age of new imperialism, ladies and gentlemen, it's very similar to what we saw within old imperialism. Is kind of another Columbian exchange, right? If we go back and remember about the early exploration, we saw that Columbian exchange where we saw diseases be transferred from the old world to the new world, food, plants, animals. Okay, we're going to see the same thing, but these not necessarily the Americas, but we're going to see from Asia and from Africa. And so we're going to start to see botanical gardens to develop useful plants, and we're going to see the European countries develop and transform the economies in Africa and Asia using agriculture. We're going to see in India they're going to be forced to grow cotton, hemp, tea, Algeria, olives, grapes, fruits, rubber in Africa and in Asia. And so we are going to see very similar to what we saw within old imperialism, ladies and gentlemen. These vast agricultural economies develop in these areas, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we're going to see zoology. We're going to see a greater understanding of some of the different animals in these different areas. We're going to see zoos with animals from all over the world, natural history museums, medicine, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to see medicine become one of the justifications for the civilizing mission in Africa and in Asia, spreading medicine, bringing medicine. Western medicine to these non-Western lands, spreading medicine to spreading European and Western medicine to help the natives. Missionaries are gonna use this to convert natives to Christianity, heal the body and heal the soul. That's gonna be a justification for them. And scientists are also gonna win governmental support, ladies and gentlemen, by demonstrating the power of modern medicine. Louis Pasteur, he's going to come up with a cure for rabies. Dr. Walter Reed is going to help eradicate yellow fever by targeting mosquitoes. And so scientists are going to really show the government that, that, hey, this research that we're doing could help benefit your own interests. Obviously it'll help soldiers and it'll help, the government if we get rid of yellow fever. So give us, scientists are saying to the governments, give us the money for funding and we can do this. Okay, so this is definitely going to be an important relationship, science and the government's an important relationship within new imperialism, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, we're also going to see, ladies and gentlemen, anthropology be a scientific study during this time, very much linked to racial thinking and imperial policy. And ever since the Europeans had been, exploring and interacting, they had begun to record and analyze the other peoples that they encountered. And so we're going to start to see anthropological societies founded in Paris, in London, in Berlin, and they believed in polygenesis, that there was multiple origins of humans, and that there was an inherent inequality of the races. And what's important to understand about this, ladies and gentlemen, is this science is very much going to meld with that racist thinking of this time, of social Darwinism, of the white man's burden that we have talked about before, ladies and gentlemen. And anthropology, just to clarify, is the study of different groups of humans, of different people. And so there's going to be that very much that anthropology during this time is going to be founded and based upon this racial notion, this racist notion of the inherent inequality of the races. They believe that intelligence was based on skull type, and they're going to infuse anthropological thinking with racial thinking, like I said before, and work closely with colonial administrators and teach the notion and perpetuate the notion that non-Westerners were inferior, their economies were underdeveloped, and use that as a justification, ladies and gentlemen, for why we're going to be seeing, why they're going to be bringing them European and Western culture and civilization. And so we're going to see up until the 1950s, we're going to see anthropological museums. We're going to see the Museum of Mankind in Paris, where they're going to actually display non-Western artifacts, even people. So they're going to put people in museums, villages up until the 1950s. But again, that premise of that premise of inferior versus superior cultures and people, ladies and gentlemen. Okay. All right, that is it for this lecture, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to stop here. Thank you so much. That is it for the entire lecture, the entire chapter. Next lecture, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be starting chapter 18, World War I. Thank you so much.